Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teachings of the Ascended Masters on Fallen Angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. And I believe in the last episode, we were talking about the 12th planet written by Zecharia Sitchin.
Yes.
And we had mentioned that the god Anu was the ruler of this planet.
Yep.
We recall that this is where the Nephilim came from, who are known as fallen angels or the cast down ones.
Yes.
And that this particular group of fallen angels or rebels were on the 12th planet because they were inhabiting large areas of this solar system and galaxy. And so they were following Anu. And we were going to take up
Yes.
right from there. And I think we got some
Right.
very explosive information regarding Anu.
We do. I just wanted to mention that the 12th planet, this is the book, and this is a very old cover. The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin. I want to remind everyone that everything that Sitchin writes, according to the masters, is not totally correct. But we're going to point out to you what is correct and what is not correct. But this is the book, and it now has a different cover. So Anu, of course, is the ruler of the 12th planet. His sons, as Stephen said, are in Enlil and Enki, and they also have sons, and we're not going to go into all the names. But this Anu, believe it or not, according to the revelation given to us by the Ascended Masters, was Peshu Alga reincarnated. Now remember, Peshu Alga was the one who started this condemnation. His son died, and he condemned God, he condemned hierarchy, he condemned cosmic
Right, and was
law,
responsible for influencing Lucifer.
and he influenced Lucifer.
And he was a friend of his. He knew
Yes,
him from the
He
beginning.
knew him, and so that's where it began, at least in terms of historical knowledge that we have. We also know that there were dark forces that Peshu Alga turned to in his rebellion, the origin of which we didn't get into in detail, but basically speaking, if you have free will, you can go to the dark side. And many worlds and systems of worlds decided, yeah, let's go to the dark side so we can be in these lower spheres of matter and therefore not be responsible for the chain of command of hierarchy. We're doing our own thing.
Right,
I'm just recapitulating
Right,
that.
and I just wanted to also, restate that to keep the chronology order in place.
Yes.
Peshu Alga is starting out over 200 million years ago, and here we are now in time at
Yes.
around 450,000 years ago.
Right.
That's when the Nephilim from the 12th planet
Yes.
arrive in their spacecraft
Yes.
and land on Earth, and that's where we are now. So we've come. So Peshu Alga, you're going to notice, has lost a lot of his momentum. So the momentum he had when he first engaged Lucifer
Yeah.
at over 200 million years ago,
Yeah.
and now here he is at 450,000 years ago, but he happens to be the god and a ruler of this particular planet.
Right.
So let's continue with what he does and his sons.
Well, before we do that, I just want to let everybody know
Go ahead and tell them.
that we talked about the final judgment of Lucifer, we talked about the final judgment of Satan, and at the end of 1984, Peshu Alga was taken by the forces of light and went through the final judgment and the second death. So this individual was canceled out as Lucifer and Satan and many, many, many other fallen ones and Nephilim. The cycle was ended. They did not repent. They did not try to get to the light side. They stayed on the dark side and they continued their momentum. So, therefore, we do not have Peshu Alga any longer in embodiment.
Nor his consort. And,
Right, that's right.
And anyone who followed Peshu Alga,
Yeah.
that is sometimes referred to as his seed
Yes.
in biblical
Yeah.
terms,
Yeah.
were also all taken
Yes.
to the second death.
Yes.
Now, this is we need to say these things because we don't want the audience to think that the karmic board, the angelic host, and God
Yeah,
just sits
right.
around watching havoc being wreaked on this planet and other
Yeah.
planets, and nothing is ever done.
Right.
Because that's where that statement comes from, how long, O Lord? You know, and sometimes you read the news today and you go, how long, O Lord?
Yeah, they're still
But
saying
it
that.
was worse one time.
It was far worse.
You know, when you had, and you're going to see why, because when the Nephilim, under the auspices of Anu and his sons, come to Earth, they wreak some kind of havoc for a while. But again, in the mind and in the cycles of the time for the angelic host and for ascended beings,
Yes.
it's really no time at all. It's a very short amount of time. And remember, they're relegated to only the physical plane, the mental plane, and the astral plane.
Yes.
And
yes.
they cannot go anywhere else, which is why they have the spacecraft they have.
Right.
You know?
Yes, that's a good point.
In order for them to move from
Yeah.
galaxy to galaxy, they cannot, like an ascended master, bilocate, multiply themselves millions of times over, and be everywhere at once.
Right.
They have to be forced into these craft that move from one place to another, land the craft, have other craft come out of that craft, and also, you know, clones and have clones in order to be able to move the craft from point A to point B and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm bringing this up because on the internet a lot, especially today and for a long time, you have people thinking that they have so much power, that these aliens have power. So in one sense, what I'm trying to say is that these are aliens from other planets, but they do not look like the grays that everyone is used to, or what people talk about a lot is the reptilian race. And we'll get into that a little bit more, because we haven't talked about UFOs as much, but I just want to make sure that alien could simply mean an evolution that was on a particular planet and came to Earth, in that they were not indigenous to this planet. There was no cycle derived from God or the angels or the karmic board, whereby a particular evolution had to evolve here for a specific reason.
Yes.
These are individuals that are coming here that were never asked to come here. So you can continue now.
And the fact that they could come and not be stopped was because the evolutions of Earth have already compromised to such an extent that the aura of protection around the planet was taken away because of the free will choices of the people to go to the dark side or to follow Peshoalga and Lucifer.
Yeah, I think there's a very specific Ascended Master statement for that. They said that, and this applies to an individual or to an entire planet. And that statement is, when you lose your perfection, you lose your protection.
And that's a very important point. When you lose your perfection, you lose your protection.
And so here we have Earth has lost their perfection a long time ago. And so the protection is down, and now they are vulnerable, like you said, to all of these various individuals, fallen angels, or what have you, coming here.
Well, Peshoalga, alias Anu, at this time now, we're going to maybe 300,000 years ago. They decided to create a slave race on Earth to do mining work for them. The Anunnaki, which was kind of the servants of the Nephilim gods, and they were considered as gods to the people of Earth when they got here, did not want to do the work, and so they decided, well, let's create a primitive worker, a worker that can do all the work of mining for us, because it's, after all, we're sweating a lot, you know.
It's difficult work.
It's difficult work. Their muscles are aching, the poor Anunnaki.
Yeah, the poor things.
So let's create a slave race, and they were called primitive workers. Okay, so how? Well, this book goes into great detail, which we're not going to go into, except to say that they were genetically engineered using the genes of the Nephilim. For instance, Enlil and Enki, the two chief Nephilim, they used their genes, the egg of a female Homo erectus, and that was placed into a birth goddess, a goddess meaning an ordinary Nephilim woman who volunteered to say, yes, I'm going to be the one who's going to bring forth these workers. Now, there are much more advanced ways that were used previously in making robots or in making mechanization man or primitive worker. This is a specific method specific to the Nephilim of the 12th planet that was used, what we're saying, and it's explained in the book. So the genes of Nephilim, the egg of female Homo erectus, and the birth goddesses, and they produced what a species is what was known today as, has been known as Homo sapiens. Sapiens meaning wisdom from the Latin. And of course, this particular species has reincarnated to the present day. And they eventually multiplied, although originally they weren't supposed to reproduce.
Right. And see, this is what causes a lot of confusion about evolution on this planet.
Yeah.
Because once you realize that Homo erectus itself was a genetically engineered creature, they are not the creation of God. They are not emanations of God.
That's right.
The Homo erectus itself is godless. It has no divine spark. It has no higher self, what we've called the Christ self.
Yes.
It doesn't have any of that. And this is the problem. And the concept of the mixing is the knowledge that the fallen ones from the 12th planet knew. They know scientifically, and being angels themselves who understand creation and how it happens, they knew exactly what they were doing. See, they knew that if you mix the seed of the Nephilim with this creature called Homo erectus, it entraps the light that they have as fallen angels. Just because they're fallen angels does not mean that they don't have still the light of God in them and in their genetic code and in their seed. So once you mix the light of God, this is very diabolical, to an animal creation, that animal will, it's inhabited and it has a tendency to move towards the light, although very slowly because it only has a little bit. It has no divine spark of its own.
Yes.
But they know that they have just entrapped the light. And now it has to evolve through this created being.
Right. And this is a very, very important point you're making. And of course, Zachariah Sitchin claims that Homo erectus was the product of Darwinian evolution. But in fact, it was hanging around the earth 450, 320,000 years ago, still around, and that's why they used it. But as Stephen said, the experimentation with various creatures were going on, as Elizabeth Clare Prophet has mentioned, at least for 12 million years. I don't know if you wanted to read an excerpt on that.
No, it basically just says that that she just, the quote is basically that experimentation from these kinds of scientists, goes back easily 12 million years. See, when we say fallen angel, it doesn't mean that that angel is brilliant in the areas of science and technology. And some of these fallen angels, fell on with specific momentums prior to their fall. They were scientists. They understood creation.
Yes.
In the heaven world.
Yes.
And so when they come down, they just don't all of a sudden lose that knowledge, but they use that knowledge for nefarious.
Yeah. They use. Yeah.
Right. So when you were just talking about Darwinianism, it's also been stated that the creatures that are the alleged ancestors of Homo erectus,
right,
the hominids, those creatures were brought here or genetically engineered on Earth, or were brought here from other planets, and they were genetically engineered there, brought here, and they're just roaming around.
And dropped off, like it could be a million years or so, to see what would happen, and then their creators would come back and say, I wonder what, maybe he grew a nail or something, or maybe he,
Yeah, are they in caves? Are they not in caves?
Are they not in caves?
When you look at the hominids,
go in the cave and seek shelter?
Because when you look at a hominid, if you go to anywhere online and look up your alleged ancestors, you're going to see creatures that are so far away from the divine matrix of man
Right.
that it is somewhat ridiculous for me to realize that that there's an evolutionary process, because you also have the missing link thing that we might talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I don't remember where you were in the story here, but you were talking about.
I don't think I do either, actually.
So
Says here.
what will then, maybe I'll just read this part from Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
Good.
Regarding this particular
Okay.
quote on the subject matter. So after millions of years of the intermingling of the races and the law of reincarnation itself, and also the further complication of angels of light volunteering to take over and enter and evolve through the bodies created by the fallen ones, there is no way of telling what the origin of an individual is, except by the presence of the divine spark within the temple. So we have to start realizing here that we are not derived from what the Nephilim did, the creation of Homo sapiens, because most people believe that what we look like now is the evolutionary process of Homo sapiens. And here's another point of clarity on this subject from Elizabeth Clare Prophet, given in 1981. So right now, she says, the real statement of creation does not exist anywhere for anyone to read, even in Sitchin's book, because Sitchin draws the conclusion, like we had said before, that everybody on earth is therefore the descendant of the blend of Homo erectus and the Nephilim. And of course, our statement, meaning the Ascended Masters, is that we, the sons of God, those who have the divine spark, the children of the light, and those who came on the rescue mission, the angels who accompany them, arrived intact with these bodies from other planets and systems of worlds, and our evolution comes from our lineage going directly back to Elohim, the creator gods. And this missing link is not inscribed in the Akkadian cuneiform tablets of the Near East that Sitchin talks about.
And the Sumerian tablets, the Akkadian.
Right. Because the Nephilim definitely took care to see to it that the record of the coming of the ones who were not the fallen ones were nowhere to be inscribed. So there you are. If it will take the missing links of the Ascended Masters' teachings to reestablish the esteem in the people of light on this planet that they are not the product of an animal creation, experimental test tube life that was done by the Nephilim. So that is a statement that is clarifying that, and even if we did, there were certain angels of the light that did determine as a sacrifice to embody in some of these mechanized man in order to raise it up, but they waited until that man was more refined and had more of the development of the mind. So the conclusion is, it is not the physical form. It is what animates that form that is important. If God so chooses, through a directive by his angels, to embody in a form such as we have described, ultimately, the light of that angel that embodies in a form like that will win out.
This is a very powerful statement.
And it helps, the race of people that are on the planet now to be relieved of this burden that they are nothing more than an animal.
Yeah, and they evolved from the ape.
Right.
When the ape itself was genetically engineered and mixed with humans. You see that?
Yeah. This is
It
changes things drastically.
It does. So the whole point is, we have two types on Earth: the Homo sapiens, various robots, have no soul, no I am presence, and the sons and daughters of God and the children of God. Before we mentioned the root races, and there was the fourth and fifth and so forth, these are all the children of God.
Right.
It's a very important point. Now, the question may be asked, from time to time, is it possible, for instance, for Homo sapiens to actually receive a threefold flame?
Mm-hmm.
They were
That's a good
created
point.
in that
Right.
way. And we do know from the teachings of the Ascended Masters that at least during the Piscean Age, which basically is over and ended approximately around 2001, during the age of Pisces, from the birth of Jesus all the way up until, again, the end of the Piscean Age, Homo sapiens could receive a threefold flame, and specifically because they accepted Jesus as Savior. And that is why the Christian dispensation was spread this word, teach ye the whole world, all evolutions, because if someone had lost a threefold flame, they originally had it, perhaps a child of God, or the Homo sapiens and robot races, if they were able, by some light that was residual
Mm-hmm.
in them, they could definitely receive a threefold flame. And that would be the start of a new evolution where eventually they would be gifted with a actually divine self at some point in evolution. We do not have statistics in terms of
Right.
when and how many were able to. However, since Pisces is over, we do not really know if this dispensation is still in force.
Mm-hmm.
It could be or it could not be. We don't know that. We only know that it existed in Pisces, which is a tremendous opportunity that the hierarchy gave to these unfortunate beings who were created to actually receive a divine spark. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. This is again the mercy that's given down to the karmic board and other councils that have to make these kinds of decisions. I mean, can
Yeah.
you imagine being on a council like that where you have to decide whether or not something that was created, and now you're talking about Homo sapiens around 250,000 years ago. Now
Yeah.
we're coming, forward in time. There's a lot of refinement by the very fact that light was used to create the creature in the first
Yes.
place. It's going to refine over time, and now you have to make a decision as to whether or not this, animated creature can earn a divine
Yes.
spark.
Yes. Yes.
It's not an easy decision if you're on a council like that.
I don't think I'm going to apply to one of those councils
No, I'm not going to do that job. But
unless they force me.
though you're not going to get forced.
I hope not.
You got free will, don't you?
Well, certainly I have free will.
All right, now
that.
our story is continuing with.
Now we're going to go into some history
Okay.
about some planets.
All right. We're going to leave off the 12th planet then for a while.
Yes, for time
Yeah.
and a half of time, we are going to leave off the 12th
But I do
planet.
encourage people watching the show, if you want to really get a handle of what Enlil and Enki did to this planet and the preposterous things they did, you should really read the 12th planet, at least that one. He has a lot more books, but that one is the starter book
Yeah.
that reviews everything we just said.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I have to do it.
Yeah, the history.
We have the history of the solar system that was given to us by the Ascended Masters, and they are telling us that serious things happened in this solar system. For instance, there was a planet which is now the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter called Maldek. There, on this planet, which exploded because of the misuse of nuclear energy. Now, there was war in the solar system, and we're told this in a footnote to one of the great teachings of the Master Kuthumi, that there was war among Earth, Mars, and Maldek at one point. We do not have a date on this, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it was millions of years ago. We mention Mars because Mars, every planet is on one of the 7 rays. We're not going to go into detail. But Mars is on the beautiful white ray of purity, and the civilization that developed on Mars was magnificent. It was almost like ancient Egypt or the tremendous temples that we see outpictured, you know, in some of the ancient civilizations on Earth. Mars was taken over, and they did remove the etheric body of Mars, and it's now devastated, as you all know, and as well as other planets are devastated. So we had this war going on, and it's a very interesting situation that this is a revelation. Earth, Mars, and Maldek. We have signs of the war on Earth, desert places where the records are covered. But it's an interesting thing that a particular author called Joseph Farrell, who does not study the teachings of the masters at all, but simply has a book called The Cosmic War, in which he attempts to prove that there indeed was war in the solar system. He also comes to the conclusion that there was a planet between Mars and Jupiter that exploded. The asteroid belt is there. There was also another planet very close to the sun that also was destroyed due to karmic reasons. But this guy, Joseph Farrell, says interplanetary warfare, modern physics, and ancient texts. He actually goes back to the Sumerian texts, as Sitchin did, and tries to prove by many different, and you read this book too.
Yeah, it was a
I
very
think
good
you
book.
read more of it than I did.
Yeah, and I just, before we end this particular episode, I just wanted to say that if you do read the 12th planet, he talks about the planet Nibiru coming into our solar system.
Yes.
And that is the creation of the asteroid belt. So, you know, what ultimately has to happen is that each individual, if you're interested in these subjects, you read the book, whether it's an Ascended Master's book or whether it's Sitchin's book, and you make your own tumen, because really we are taught by our own higher self. You are taught by the divine spark within you. And you know, we don't want to tell anyone that this is the way it is.
Right.
You use your own attunement and decide what did happen, because there are very strange anomalies in our solar system. And I think we will probably continue with that in the next episode of the situations and what happened to the evolutions that were on those planets.
Yes.
And we'll pick that up in our next episode. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.